Let me start by saying don't judge a book by its cover. Now, you might be wondering why a young woman such as me might be using a mobility aid, and that is because I have Ehlers Danlos syndrome. Ehlers Danlos syndrome is a connective tissue disorder that pretty much affects every system in your body, but for me, it mainly affects my joints. Because of this, it is very difficult for me to get around, and that's why I use this rollator. This one is my own personal rollator, but before I got it, I borrowed one from a friend. I started having issues with my mobility back in 2020. Ehlers Danlos syndrome hit me like a train, and it pretty much changed my life overnight. I could have seen this coming, honestly, because Ehlers Danlos syndrome is a genetic disorder and runs in my family, and I already had two sisters diagnosed at this point, so it was really just a matter of time before it was my turn. Before this affected me, I had been walking 20 miles a day. I am a backpacker. I went to college for outdoor education. I spent a semester backpacking, so this is my norm. And all of a sudden, my norm was crushing me because I couldn't even walk a mile without pain. And when I talk pain, I mean I'd have to lie down in bed for the rest of the day. I had never felt anything like it. It was debilitating. I started having dislocations, especially in my hips. I think this is because they were most affected by my backpacking, and walking became harder and harder. I started using braces, and then I started using crutches, and after a couple years using crutches, I started to realize it wasn't just the walking that sucked, it was standing too. One day, I was lamenting to my friend who also has chronic pain about how difficult it was to stand at the crosswalk and wait for the light to change, how even just standing for those 2 minutes was so hard for me, and how I wished there was some way that I could just sit while I was out and about. That was when she changed my life for the better by telling me there was such a thing as rollators, which are basically rolling walkers with chairs, and that she would let me borrow hers on one condition. I had to deck it out with a customized paint job of my own design. That's how I got into this project of customizing this rollator. I am so incredibly grateful to my friend for lending me her rollator until I could get one of my own. It seriously saved my butt. Well, more importantly, my hips. And in the time that I was using it, I got so much relief. Of course, I wanted to design something for her that represented all that she embodied. And as a free spirit, I saw that as nature, honestly. So I created this nature scene. But for now, I'll leave the results as a surprise. Anyway, Ehlers Danlos syndrome first popped onto my radar back in, I want to say, 2012. At the time, my sister was obsessed with Suicide Girls. Who here remembers Suicide Girls? The alternative pinup girls with all the tattoos and brightly colored hair and piercings? The salacious ladies of the night? Anyway, my sister was particularly obsessed with Mandy Morbid, who was a suicide girl, and she had Ehlers Danlos syndrome, and she had a lot of other medical issues related to Ehlers Danlos syndrome. And so from learning about this sexy internet lady, I found out about what would eventually become my own disability. Who would have thought that an alternative professional naked lady would ultimately lead to me getting a diagnosis? I don't think I ever would have known about this disorder if it hadn't been for Mandy Morbid on Suicide Girls, honestly. So I guess in a way I'm grateful for Suicide Girls in helping me get the foot in the door that I needed to get a diagnosis. Anyway, now that I'm aware, I can see that the signs point back as far as I can remember. All my life, people have told me that I am flexible, and they'd always be astounded by the things I could do. And I'd look at them baffled like, it's easy. Why can't you do this? I genuinely couldn't understand why other people weren't double jointed like me because it came so naturally and effortlessly. It was easy. I did all sorts of acrobatic things growing up. I even was in a teen circus troupe. So I was doing acrobatics every week effortlessly without thinking twice. The first family member to really show signs was my sibling Finley, and they got hit pretty hard. And I think in a way that makes sense because they were the most active, physical, athletic member of our family. They did taekwondo, gymnastics, ballet, horseback riding. They did it all, and they took a lot of injuries over our childhood. Finley was the first to get diagnosed, and naturally, my sister Leslie was the one to let them know because Leslie was the one who had discovered Ehlers Danlos syndrome through Mandy Morbid. Now, the issues Finley had been having were going unresolved and were relatively ignored by doctors, and they had been very discouraged that they weren't getting any answers until we discovered these similarities between Mandy Morbid and Finley, and the light bulb turned on in everyone's heads. As soon as we started reading up on Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, it checked so many boxes for all of us. So Finley got diagnosed, and then Leslie got diagnosed. Actually, Leslie was diagnosed with hypermobility spectrum disorder, which is similar to the hypermobile type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, the one that Finley has. And I was third. We're not sure if my brother will ever get diagnosed. We're not even sure if he has it, but it seems that we've been collapsing like dominoes for years. Anyway, I consider myself to be pretty fortunate because I don't have it the best off in my family, but I certainly don't have it off the worst. I'm kind of in the middle as far as the ability of my siblings goes. I do use mobility aids, but I have days where I'm good and I don't need them. I don't use them as much as I used to ever since I've been in physical therapy, and I can ambulate with more ease than Finley. I am very smooth. My skin is very smooth, but that also means it's fragile. So I bruise very easily and I get sprains and dislocations still very easily. So I still use my braces, but I've learned to live with it and it's gotten a lot better. There are some accessory issues that come with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, my most significant being narcolepsy, which I actually consider to be more severe than the dislocations. Narcolepsy really kicks me on my ass. I also have had GI issues, which is not uncommon, and I have had fainting issues that have somewhat resolved, so I've never been diagnosed for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, but that is another one that runs in my family. I used to be really afraid of my future when I started having issues with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome because, like I said, it hit me like a train and it was a huge overhaul of my life overnight. I had never dealt with pain before, let alone chronic pain. I didn't know how to live with that, and I knew what the future looked like because I'd seen it in Finley and how it had debilitated their life, and I was scared that I would end up like them in a wheelchair. Now I realize that was a very ableist view and that I can still have a full, beautiful life in a wheelchair as well as a rollator. So I have more hope than before, and I actually feel pretty cool. I mean, check out this dope rollator. Who wouldn't want to rock that? Anyway, it has come full circle and it is time for me to return this beautiful rollator to my friend. Hopefully she loves it. I think she will. I'm very proud of it. I put in a lot of hard work and I think it really shows. Ta-da! The finished beauty. This is my, I guess, representation of my friend. This is how I think of her when I see her in my mind. I think of her as a beautiful environment of our breathy, flowing atmosphere and all of the creatures in the world, the hues in the night sky, the beauty of clouds, the freedom and fluidity of waves. I don't know. Like I said, she's a free spirit. I think that this really embodies her very much. I was pleased to find some gold paint for the twinkling stars, and she loves dolphins, so of course I included those. I was really going for freedom with this one, because I think of her as one of the most genuine people I know, and I wanted that to show. So that's kind of what I came up with. Yeah. Anyway, I'm grateful for friends like her for helping me and supporting me on my health journey. And I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for the appreciation I have for my health and the awareness and the ability to take good care of myself. And I'm grateful for some pieces of flair like this rollator.